how we start this one.
I have no idea either.
Maybe we should start with intros. I'm Mike Kamate.
I'm Jacob Tender.
Welcome to Bantha Fodder. This is episode 16. This is the first episode of 2017.
2017. Mike, we are coming up on a year of Bantha Fodder.
I know. We didn't start exactly in January last year. We started like February or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But that's pretty good. That's more than one episode a month.
It is on average. How many? But like, also you've like lapped us, I think, like twice with your other podcast, Variable Bit Rate.
Yeah, but I haven't recorded that one in over a month, so we might just catch up here.
Okay, cool. I'll make it my goal. This is also the first. This is the first Bantha Fodder post Rogue One release.
Yeah, and the reason we're recording this so late is because Mike took forever to see the movie.
I did take a while. I'll admit it. The movie came out what day? The 16th?
16th.
I didn't see it until the 26th, so I went 10 days spoiler-free with that movie.
And I went 10 days without having anybody to talk to about Rogue One.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to do that to you. But it was, I had to wait. I had to wait because it was, I go back home for the holidays up to Boston, and all my friends do too. We're spread out over the continental U.S., and we all kind of converge back on Boston for the holidays every year. And I guess now our thing is going to be seeing a Star Wars movie every holiday, and this year it was Rogue One. But we always see it at Jordan's Furniture in Reading.
Starting now, buy anything at Jordan's, and if the Red Sox win the World Championship this season, it'll be yours free. That's right, it's all free.
That's the place I saw. I saw episode 7 there last year, and it's just like a furniture store that like they route you through the furniture store in order to get there. I mentioned it on the episode 7 podcast when we did that last year, but oh my god, it was just like. It's like a quarter mile of furniture that you have to walk through to get to the theater entrance to pick up your tickets. Like it's just, and there's just like, sofa love seat combos in every corner, and you can get like a nice dining room table, a nice right angle couch. It's crazy. And then you sit down in this giant theater. It's huge. This screen is 3 stories tall. They have like butt blasters in every seat. I think they replaced all the seats with Tempur-Pedic seats too. So it's like you sit down and you're like, this is a stiff chair, and then your ass sinks into it, and it's just like, oh, this is actually really comfortable. It's really big theater, and then there's about 7 ads for sofa love seat combos before the movie starts. It's crazy. This old guy, like in his like early 60s, white hair, ponytail, just like talking about how Jordan's Furniture is the greatest viewing experience of your life. We got butt blasters in the seats. It's going to be crazy. But it was worth it. It was worth the wait because it was amazing. It was like state-of-the-art 3D. There's like 8 theaters in the country that play it the way I saw it. And every year when I see it at that theater, I'm going to gush about how awesome a viewing experience it was and how worth it was to wait.
Some Christmas, I'm going to crash your family's holiday plans, and I'm going to come see a movie with you at Jordan's Furniture.
Yeah. I guess like so. What do you think? What do you think of Rogue One?
Oh, are we starting with overall thoughts?
I don't know. I think
overall sentiments.
I think we got to start with like a center point, like because there's so many fine details that I have been taking notes on, and at this point, it's like my opinion has been so colored by everyone I've talked to about it since I've seen it. So it's today's we're recording what like a second, a third, or something like that. I don't know what date it is today, but
second.
yeah. So it's been like about 10 days since I saw it. I've talked to so many people. I've listened to so many film podcasts and watched YouTube reviews of it. I'd recommend Red Letter Media if you haven't seen those reviews. Those guys are super vulgar, but they're spot on with their analysis, in my opinion. We Hate Movies did a special on-screen edition, and they reviewed the film. I'm trying to think. Have you listened to any good reviews about it?
I've listened to a couple podcasts about it, mostly just stuff that's already in my feed. I haven't really added a whole lot. Like the tech podcasts that I listen to, they generally are pretty nerdy, so they do a little special. Hello Internet did one. I'm about halfway through that. Just some of the regular ones, just normal people talking about Star Wars.
Yeah, I keep finding my opinion invalidated whenever I go through one of them, and at this point my brain is just mush, being like everything I know is wrong. Or I find them agreeing with me in certain spots, and then I'll go over to a friend and mention it, and then it's like, no, but it's actually this, and this is how it is. this is how you should interpret it. And I'm like, oh, God damn it.
But overall, how do you like it?
It was a movie, and I had a good time watching it.
Mm-hmm.
What was your like overall takeaway from it?
I loved it. I liked it a lot. It had its issues, and I'm sure, hopefully, I'll be able to get through all of those in the movie or in this here episode of the show. But overall, I really enjoyed it. It exceeded my expectations in a lot of areas. It changed my expectations, if that even makes sense. This is kind of one of the first movies where, yeah, it didn't like. I don't know. It is just strange because I definitely had a vision of it going into the movie, and after seeing the movie, I think it met those expectations, but it kind of turned them on their heel because I feel like the movie that I expected was in there but altered. Does that make sense?
That's kind of why I'm hesitant to be like, it was the best Star Wars movie ever. I can't. Because it just felt like my yearly dosage of Star Wars, which isn't a bad thing. It's like my daily scoop of ice cream, which I definitely actually do. It's like a really great part of my year to get to see a Star Wars movie. But ultimately, it's just like a ball of sugar with like the fixins of like nutrition, like maybe there's some calcium in there, but ultimately it's not going to do anything for my body and like my psyche.
Interesting.
No, I just felt like this is the inevitable beginning of it was like a cardboard cutout of a Star Wars movie, which is still a good movie. I think it goes without saying, spoiler warning, right? If you haven't seen
Spoiler warning.
Mom, turn it off now if you haven't seen the movie yet.
Come back next week after you've seen it.
I can't imagine my mom going to see Star Wars by herself. So we've talked about like our general feelings about it, whether we liked it or not and everything. But like, okay, so plot of the movie. What you mentioned this earlier, off mic. What did you think the plot of this movie was going into it?
The movie is about a team of rebels that are going to steal the Death Star plans. That's kind of what everybody knows going into it from the trailers, from the synopses on IMDb. That is the movie. That's the premise of this film.
I mean, that's the premise as far as we knew from looking at, production stills and the trailer. But do you think that was actually what the movie was about?
Yes and no. At the end, yes.
Right. Like, was it a hero's journey?
No, and I'm glad you brought that up because this is something I was thinking about today while kind of prepping for this episode. I feel like Rogue One is the story of the characters that stole the plans. It's not really a story of the plans being stolen. It is a story of the characters that stole the plans. That's why this movie exists. This movie doesn't need to exist to explain that the plans were stolen. We know that at the very beginning of Star Wars.
Yeah.
We know that. So this movie can only exist to tell the story of the people that actually went through with the heist. And the question that I think that we have to ask is, does this movie do those characters justice?
This was like more of a commemoration piece, I feel like. Like it was a story that like didn't need to be told.
Yeah.
But they just told it anyway because they have to make a Star Wars movie every year.
Right. Well, why did they make this one first? As far as Star Wars standalone movies go, we know that we're getting this one. We're getting a Han Solo movie, possibly a Boba Fett movie, and this could go on in perpetuity every other year while they're making the episodic movies. So why was this the first one? Why do you think Lucasfilm went through with Rogue One as the first Star Wars story?
Who's the effects whiz at ILM? He's the guy that was in like the videos with George Lucas. I just watched
John Knoll?
Yeah, that's the name. He apparently pitched this movie years and years ago, like so long ago. Mm-hmm. And it was something they kept in the back burner, I feel like, for a while. And then they were finally like, all right, we got to make a Star Wars movie every year. What are we doing? And it's like, well, how about this one? Obviously, Rogue One comes up first. Like, okay, the story of how the Death Star plans got stolen, which I think is a great idea. But I don't know. Tell me how you feel about this. Like, do you feel like this would have been better as a book?
I mean, it could have been, but I also understand and kind of appreciate why this was a good choice for a first movie outside of the direct Skywalker storyline.
Why is that?
Well, it ties in with episode 4. I mean, when we look at The Force Awakens, it definitely had a lot of, echoes from the first Star Wars film. And a lot of that was in plot and a lot of that was in character building. And there's a reason for that. We enjoy The Force Awakens, or a lot of people do, because it kind of harkens back to what we love about Star Wars. And in this movie, I feel like it does similar things, maybe not necessarily with plot or with character, but stylistically. Stylistically, this movie matches Star Wars almost down to a T. It's kind of great. I think it's fantastic what they're able to do with it.
Yeah.
So I think that Rogue One was a really great idea for the first one, because it, like The Force Awakens, introduces Star Wars to a new generation in a way that pleases those who liked it before, and not just to please people, but I mean, it kind of memorializes what was so great about Star Wars and what made it great. I don't think that the plot or the story maybe does it justice, and that's not saying that the story is bad. I think that the story is good, and I think maybe it would have been better as a book to maybe introduce the characters and to explain the characters, give them a little more room to breathe, because I think that's one of the major pitfalls of this movie.
Like, I felt like I was just reading, remember we did Aftermath, a few episodes back? Like, I felt like I wanted an aftermath of what was going on here. Like, if this was the story that Aftermath was just like, post Return of the Jedi, kind of just Empire falling apart, a few characters on this one planet going through this thing. This is the story, like a concept that I would have loved, like, Death Star plans getting stolen. They're introducing me to all new characters too, like an ensemble of heroes, and I would have loved to get the internal monologues of a lot of people, because that's what I felt like stopped me from connecting with anybody in this movie. Look at episode 7, Force Awakens. We have like Rey, you see how she lives, you see her, just kind of functioning. You get like a good idea, and like they kind of give you the Jin, but like I don't know about her relationship with her dad. Like it's just like I don't know about the things she went through. Like we saw her on the Death Star in that one little flashback. No, they were in Coruscant. They weren't on the Death Star.
Yeah, they were in Coruscant. Yeah.
And yeah, it just everything that I thought was good about how The Force Awakens developed its story and its characters was just kind of not there in Rogue One.
And that's where we have to bring in the book. I know you haven't read it. I have. The book is called Rogue One Catalyst.
Yeah, you got to
sort of like it's a prequel to the movie, like a direct prequel. The book sort of sets up the Urso family, so we get a lot of Galen, we get a lot of his wife Lyra, and we get a lot of young Jin. It's really a great book. I think overall, like it does a really great job of introducing these characters, and it gives them life. And you actually really care about this family. Something that I don't know if people get from the movie. I think you can, because like you're sympathetic towards them, because the Empire shows up at the very beginning of the movie to their home and kind of take them away. Orson Krennic is very obviously kind of like the bad guy for the movie.
Ben Mendelsohn's character,
who's fantastic, by the way. We'll get to that, but man, he was great. But in the movie, I feel like, kind of taking the book out of my mind while I was watching it for the first time. Orson Krennic was definitely like the bad guy. He was the officer of some description, which they really don't give you any background on. They give you nothing on Krennic. You just know that he is like the guy that's trying to make the Death Star a thing, and that he needs Galen Erso to complete the project. But he doesn't. The film doesn't give you any inclination that they were tight, when in fact, like Galen Erso and Orson Krennic go way back. They grew up together in school. They kind of parted ways. They came back. Orson gave Galen a bunch of opportunities and got his life back on track after some bad run-ins on different planets in the midst of the Separatist War. So there's this huge backstory between the Ursos and Orson Krennic, and that all leads up to that moment in the first scene of the film. And that is one of my favorite scenes in the movie because of the book, but I feel like that really just kind of gives you a little taste of who the Ursos are and why they might be important for the rest of the movie. And I don't think that scene has as much gravity if you haven't read the book. So this is
everything you just said makes it a worse movie for me now.
Really? Why is that?
Well, just because, like, I mean, I'm just trying to think of this as a movie, you know, like any film that requires, you know, me to understand its characters better, but having to read a book to know that, it doesn't sit well, you know?
Yeah. I think that's true. And like I think they try to show a little bit of that throughout the film. There is that flashback at Coruscant that shows that Orson Krennic is in the family's home and that they're drinking and is, you know, sort of a social occasion. It definitely shows that there was some sort of connection there, but I feel like it does it too late in the film. It doesn't do anything to help Orson's character. And I feel like what came out in the film was more or less just his ambition. And I don't want to get too deep into character here because we have a lot to talk about as far as character goes. But, you know, as far as like the main line of this film, you know, going from point A, Jyn Erso being taken into the Rebel Alliance, and point B, Death Star plans captured. I don't know, like the journey of the characters that make that happen. I don't know if this film did a great job of making them matter. And that's not to say like they should matter so like enough that they go, you know, into other branches of the universe. I'm not saying that they should survive the film or that they should be included elsewhere. I think that it's fine that characters are just a point of one story. I think that's great, actually. I love that the movie was able to wrap itself up like that. But it spent the first 2/3 of the movie introducing characters, introducing planets, most of which don't really matter to what they're trying to achieve.
No, I mean they're team building, you know, for the first 2/3 of the movie. They're trying to get Jyn Erso to come around. They're trying to get the audience to care about this character of Jyn Erso, you know. And I mean, let's just talk about that for a second. Like, we meet her in a jail cell. I mean, we meet her again, you know, like we meet her in the flashback or like the first scene, in the past, and then we meet her again. We don't know anything about her. Yeah. You know, and like to dive back into the trailer kind of here, you know, they must have listened to our episode dissecting that because she does not rebel anymore, you know?
I rebel.
Well, in the context of this movie, that scene doesn't make sense. Like she has not come around at that point. Like she is not she is not down for the cause at that point in the movie. So I could see why they might have had to reshoot that.
That's a complete divergence there from what was initially positioned, because that's a big thing for a character in a trailer to say, I'm a rebel, I'm a troublemaker, you know, like down with the Empire, and then in the film to be like, oh, I don't care. That to me is such a crazy redirection of that character. It just smacks of interference, you know?
Well, it almost sounds like they had to change it so that she would have to come around later so that she would care about her father and want to hunt him down. Except at that point in the film, they have the information that they need to go steal the Death Star plans. They don't even have to go to the planet where her father is to find him. That doesn't even matter at all.
Well, they want Cassian to assassinate the father.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. They know where the plans are. At that point,
Jyn Erso
for the
does.
goal... Yeah, for her, but who gives a damn? As far as like she has no control over the situation, and she, you know, Cassian Andor gets that call in the middle of hyperspace, which I'm not even sure is entirely passable within the context of the universe. He gets that call to say that he needs to eliminate the father. Well, that's great, but like Rebel Alliance, what the hell? You're in the final hour, and you know that they're building this gigantic weapon that's going to destroy planets. If your goal is to destroy that thing, you need to get those plans as soon as possible. You don't need to be chasing after scientists that have given you the answer as to where you can find those plans. You don't have to go find him now. You have the answer.
I took it as they didn't see it as like they I don't know if they thought it was operational yet, the Death Star. They just wanted Galen dead. That's how I saw that scene as that act.
Okay, but like, what's more important, the Death Star plans or killing a scientist?
But did they even have the plan? They weren't even believing Jyn Erso, were they?
Well, what are they going to do? Like, are they going to go to that planet and kill the only guy who knows for sure? Like,
they hadn't even seen the Death Star yet.
No, they hadn't. But
they didn't know what they were up against.
well, no,
is what
they
I'm
had.
saying.
They had. They saw it at Jeddah when it destroyed the planet. So they had seen it at this point. They know it's operational. And at that point, especially after you see it destroying the city full of people and killing some of your, kind of outcast rebels, but killing some fellow rebels, don't you think their main goal would be going to Scarif, to the tower where they hold all the architectural plans for the entire empire? Like, that was all in the message. And even if it's just Jyn Erso who knows that and she's relaying it, like, you either trust her or you don't, but using your time to go to an imperial inhabited planet to kill a scientist, like, why?
Yeah, I think we can agree it doesn't make a lot of sense there. But like, jumping back to Jen and kind of like she rebels in the trailer.
I rebel.
And she's apathetic in the actual film. I mean, do you think it would have been cooler to see, like, her being put at odds with her father? What if the rebellion is asking her to assassinate her father? Something like that. Like, why can't, like, do they need to give Cassian more of a role or something like that and make him more important? Could they not figure out how to use him? Because I don't know, like,
Cassian, I feel, was way underutilized, and I think what we were supposed to get from Cassian Andor was this sort of like rebel espionage sort of dude who's like down to do anything for the cause. Like, he's lost it all. He has nothing left to lose. He just, whatever they need, he's the guy that does it. So any dirty work as far as like killing somebody, he's the guy who does it. And I feel like they tried setting that up at the beginning on that planet that didn't matter.
That was great, though. That first scene, like, I watched him shoot that dude. He like whispers in his ear, he's like, shh, it'll be okay. And then just like just blasts him in the side. It was great. I love that.
Yeah, but I feel like that character, like, I feel like the tone of that character completely changed from that point on. Like, he wasn't like that the entire way through. Even when, like, he had the rifle raised or whatever, it didn't feel like the same character. It felt like, it just felt different. It felt chopped up and it felt different.
You're right. Chopped up and, in my point of view, interfered with, and I just, like, I want to know so badly about all the reshoots in this film. I want to know about the rewrites that went on. And, I think the official PR word is that, they showed the studio what they could do. I think the studio being Disney, right? And just showed Disney what they could do with this movie. And they were like, all right, we'll give you more to do these effect shots and things like that. They kind of just made it seem like, oh, we'll give you more money for effects and you can do reshoots that way. But I don't think it was that. I think there was like a really interesting movie here, because I don't think Rogue One is interesting. I think it was fun, but I don't think it was interesting. It was just like, I think they had something really good and the studio didn't like it, and they said like, okay, we got to change all this stuff. They added in all the fan service, they added in I did
Oh, it's so interesting you say that, because I agree with you. I think that as far as the plot goes, it wasn't particularly interesting. I think the last portion of the movie was really fun. I think there were some cool moments in the film, definitely, like when they're testing the Death Star for the first time, like just seeing the way that it like destroys a city and the way that it like liquefies and just like, the waves of destruction across Jeddah. I thought that was really cool.
How about knowing that like that's not even the full potential of the Death Star? I think that was really cool.
Yeah.
That like you're like, oh, they blew up a city on a planet, but then they blow up Alderaan entirely, which is kind of interesting, because do you think it diminishes the test?
It doesn't diminish it, because it was beautiful. And there were so many moments in this movie where the destruction is just beautiful. Because like I just watched A New Hope tonight actually with my girlfriend, and just to kind of see how it all kind of connects together. And I think it connects together very well. But with that test, the full power test that Tarkin unleashes on Alderaan, it's over in a flash. Like, there's the boo, you see the laser, warm up, and then it's shot, and then poof, Alderaan's gone. Like, it took like no time. But with this test, it's not as destructive, but it looks so much more destructive, because you're watching as the just the ground just heaves and just ripples, and it's
like slow motion. Yeah,
it's wonderful.
It looked good. It looked good.
But I was getting to the fan service thing, because what I did find interesting in the movie was the fan service. I love that stuff. I love the little Easter eggs hidden throughout the film. I particularly liked the moment where K2SO uttered our favorite line from, I think, the last normal episode that we did. Do you recall him trying to get that line out?
Yep. I have a bad feeling about this.
And then getting cut off. I thought that was cheeky. I thought that was fun.
That type of fan service I'm cool with, but like R2D2 and C3PO.
That was phoned in. That was so phoned in. That was the most blatant too.
I think the Ponda Baba and Dr. Vazan, those were definitely...
but Mike, I love that.
You love it because it allowed you to change the title of our episode to The Night After Jeddah. So I hadn't seen the film when you made those changes, and not knowing at all what Jeddah was. I think a coworker said to me, he's like, "You put a podcast out about Jeddah and you haven't even seen Rogue One yet?" I'm like, dude, I didn't write this. I didn't write this. This is all Jake.
It changed the line for the better, in my opinion. I think it sounded better and it fit into something that was actually topical. So I thank you for allowing me to do that.
I'm glad you made the change, but I'm so bummed when they bumped into them. I was just like, oh my God. Like I put my head in my hands and I laughed out loud in the theater, for different reasons than I think everybody else was laughing out loud. It was more just out of like shaking my head, there's like, really? Like, do we need that? Do I need to know those characters?
Oh, no.
In the
Mike, would it
entire
surprise
galaxy?
you to know that I've written 1,500 words about that that run-in since the movie was over? Just simply about that scene?
No, I don't doubt that at all, and it makes total sense, and I can't wait to read it. Oh, I have to read your spoiler article now, that your post about the film, but I couldn't read until I saw it. It reminds me.
I'll put a link to that in the thing. And if any Star Wars blogs out there are interested in that Ponda Baba piece, please let me know, because I'm looking to expand my horizons there with the Star Wars blogs. But anyway, I like that. I thought that run-in was cool. But, that was kind of blatant, like definitely kind of like a fan service moment for the people that had seen A New Hope. Like other people aren't going to know what that's all about. Like it might actually be kind of like distracting for people who don't like know why that's significant.
Well,
the things...
that's a cool thing you bring up, though. Like, let's look at it through the eyes of like a kid, like a 7-year-old who somehow got into that movie where all the characters die at the end. Let's look at it through the eyes of a kid who's never seen A New Hope, which is weird, but like that happens. That's pretty much the same as Luke bumping into them in the cantina.
That's true. So it's almost exactly the same thing. And then if they see Star Wars and Star Wars Episode 4, then it's the exact same thing as us seeing them in Rogue One.
Yeah, so there are parallel experiences to be had there. That being said, I think both of them suck. I think it's it's
character building. It's world building, really, not even character building.
It's not world building. It's a way to yank the viewer right out of the movie.
Yeah, but that's what makes Star Wars so great, and that's why it felt so big. Because if you just make Star Wars, the movie Star Wars, about a farm kid getting in a ship, flying to a Death Star, rescuing a princess, and then blowing up the Death Star without any of the extra stuff in between, like it doesn't make it a huge movie that you can build a franchise off of. It's just like a cool sci-fi action flick. But there are so many other little ones in this thing that I feel like a lot of people without the internet wouldn't have noticed.
Well, those are the good ones. Okay, let me throw one at you. Red 5.
Red 5 was great.
Well, that was a great Easter egg because it wasn't something overt. It wasn't in your face. It wasn't a wink. It was just kind of like a thing, like, oh, there was a Red 5 before Luke. There was a reason that Red 5 was vacant when Luke joined up with the rebellion. That was cool because you had to figure something out there. Even like the old footage that they reused in those flight scenes, seeing like Gold Leader and Red Leader, that made sense because they were supposed to be there. It makes sense that they were in the fight. They weren't shoehorned in. You would think that they bring in like their elite fighter pilots for a mission like that, which they did. The fact that Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan, there was no reason they should have been there on Jeddah. I mean, maybe they had a reason. I don't know, but in their character bios,
maybe not. In the Rogue One book, it does give a little more context to them, of course. But shouts out to Pablo Hidalgo for that. I agree with that. I love the Red 5 thing. I was like, oh man, actually that's kind of cool because it kind of like opens up the seat for Luke, and I'm sure some other seats were opened up in there too for Wedge and Biggs, obviously. Porkins. This movie also had its own Porkins, not the Porkins, but Porkins.
Okay.
Actually, I was looking through the Rogue One book, and it has like a list of all the pilots that flew for the rebellion in this movie, and Porkins' call sign was the only one that wasn't listed in the book. Like all of the numbers were there except for Porkins' number. So I just thought that was weird. Why not? Come on, just like they couldn't do it.
Is that actor dead?
The original actor, probably.
We'll look it up.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I thought that one was cool, but just the little things here and there, just like them shouting over the intercom for General Syndulla. Obviously, that's a reference to Star Wars Rebels. There are other references to Rebels throughout the film.
Obviously.
You can. There's definitely going to be a lot of tie-ins there. They're starting to tie the film in even more beginning next season with Saw Gerrera being in the show.
Was he in Clone Wars too? Saw Gerrera was in Clone Wars.
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was in an episode of Clone Wars, and that's where his character originally kind of stemmed from. But I love seeing the Ghost, flying in space and also on the ground at the Yavin base. I thought that was cool. That gives me a little hope for some of my favorite characters in the TV show. That's kind of neat. You could actually see Chopper and hear Chopper in one of the scenes, which I thought was really cool. I didn't notice that the first time through, but I did look for him the second time through because I'd heard he was there.
Dude, you are nerding out so hard right now.
I know. But it's cool because you see Chopper rolling by and you hear him go, walk, walk. And that's great. It's fun. For the people who care about that kind of stuff, like, it's fun. It's cool to see a movie that is so obviously fan-made. In a lot of similar ways to The Force Awakens, but in a lot of different ways as well. Like, the people that are making these movies are pulling the things that they find enjoyable and putting it into their film. And why not? Like, Star Wars is a huge playground. If you have the opportunity to make a Star Wars film, put in whatever it is that you love about Star Wars. That's what makes it special.
I wanted something else.
What did you want? What were you looking for in this movie?
I wanted just characters. I wanted characters, Jake.
Okay. Well, you got some characters that may not have been developed that great, but what did you think of the characters that you got?
I thought they were cardboard cutouts.
Yeah.
I couldn't feel for anybody, really. Maybe because I'm a sociopath. Who knows?
A lot of them just weren't developed. I mean, Cassian Andor, you don't get any background on him, which is fine. You don't need background on every single character. There's no time in a movie to build background for every single character. You don't get background on Han Solo before he just jumps in and, flies away from a Star Cruiser. Like, you don't get that from him. And you don't need that with Cassian Andor either. But I feel like with Cassian, like, there's not that much depth to him. And I feel like they kind of tried to shoehorn that in with that grandiose speech that he gave Jyn, wherein, like, her father is, he's dead, and, he's like, well, finally you're coming around to the reason we all do this, and, like, you're not the only one who's lost something. We've all lost something. I've lost everything. Like, that still didn't even, like, make me care. And then at the end of the film, when they kind of sort of tried to make, like, a little romantic thing with Jyn and Cassian at the end, like, I never at any point in the movie, like, kind of saw, like, a will they, won't they. And I was kind of glad for that. I'm like, I don't need romance in the Star Wars movie. I don't think that Cassian Andor was effective. And I was so looking forward to Diego Luna's character because I love him. His off-screen personality is amazing, but I didn't feel like it came across on screen.
Yeah, he struck me as a good rebel, just like the good rebel. He just does what he's asked, believes in the cause, knows how to command. Just, but I think they wanted him to be something else. Like, the love interest thing, I don't really. I'm on both camps in this one. Like, it would have been nice to see a little romance in a movie.
But in the last two shots of those characters on the film,
I think,
like,
I saw those last couple of shots as, like, just shared bonding at the end of the world. Just like,
yeah.
Like,
I try to see it like that too.
Yeah, like, when they're just staring at each other in that elevator and not smooching, I'm okay with that. Like, I feel like they just went through something crazy, and if they did start making out in that shot, it would feel as out of place as R2-D2 in this movie. Just like,
yeah,
it's just like, it's it's a movie. There's romance in movies, but doesn't need it didn't need to be there. Like, that shared look, realizing, I think they're just realizing they're about to die going down that elevator. They hit the beach and they sit down and just, like, they're reaching out for that last human contact, or like that last strand of just, like, connection before they go. Yeah. And that is just, I think that's fine.
Maybe you're right. And I will try to watch it like that going forward. It just, it kind of felt like they were trying to show me something different. Something that I didn't see in the beginning of the movie that I might have. It felt like I was supposed to pick up on something earlier that I didn't.
Well, at what point did it get, like, romantic between them. It had to have happened in that.
It wasn't overtly, but it just like those longing. It just looked more like longing looks than like we did it and like thank you kind of looks. You know what I mean? Like it felt more romantic than it should have been.
It could be longing, but it could be also realization that like they're not going to have that chance. I'm definitely reading really far into it and kind of extrapolating from what we had in the frame there. But I think that I don't think there's a lot of opportunity for them to deepen their relationship. They seem like siblings for most of the movie, like not really bickering like siblings, but just like at odds, like trying to like slap some sense into the other one. And then Jen comes around and suddenly just loves the rebellion. And Diego Luna is just super into it then, but not in a romantic way. I don't know. I never got like a Han Solo cornering Leia on the Falcon in episode 5. I never got that kind of like he's trying to put the moves on her or she's digging what he's like putting out there. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I feel like that final scene on the beach, like, first of all, the only reason they're on the beach is just so they wouldn't be on the top of the tower when Krennic got his just desserts. Like, that had to be just Krennic up there, so they caught an elevator ride down to the bottom of the base with no interference from anybody. So I felt that was a little weird. And also, like, no spoilers here, but it reminded me of a standout scene in Westworld, the TV show. And I no spoilers there. I don't know if you or anybody else who is listening to this has finished it. I don't want to spoil that.
I've seen it all. I'm trying to place it, but
it takes place pretty close to the end. It just reminds me a lot of a scene between two characters in that show where it's just like it just seemed a little corny for me, and that's fine. Like, it wasn't like a big deal. At that point I was just kind of like, this movie's got courage because it's killing everybody, and I love that. It was just it was a weird moment for me, and I just thought that it didn't really mix with the characters.
That's really funny because I found that like the most real moment is just like two humans connecting at the end of the world. I thought that was just like that was really beautiful, I thought.
Well, you're a big softie.
Well, I mean, I've been hard on the rest of the movie, but like, I don't know. I felt no chemistry between the characters in this film. The two, the Donnie Yen's character and other, the heavy, I call him just because he reminds me of like a Team Fortress character.
Yeah, that's Baze Malbus and Chirrut Imwe.
Yeah, they were cool. Like they were clearly friends. But again, just honestly could have been combined into one character.
They were a cute duo, but yeah, their point in the film wasn't as interesting as the concept of the concept of their former job. I'm not sure how much of that you caught, but like they were kind of introduced tangentially by Cassian to Jyn as guardians of the Wills. These were former guardians of the Jedi Temple. They're not Jedis, they're not Force wielders, but they're they're warriors who kind of worship the Force as a whole. That's kind of like a theme we're starting to get over and over again. There were the Church of the Force people at the beginning of The Force Awakens.
What was that character's name? Laura Santeca or something?
Laura Santeca. Yeah, Laura Santeca's people. Then we have Lyra Urso, who like believed very heavily in the Force. That you kind of get from the book, obviously not so much from this, but she did wear the same kind of like red cloth that Imwe did, so that's kind of like a neat little thing there. Like there's definitely something to that, and I'm kind of wondering when that's going to come back around, because the Wills, I don't want to go too much into this, and I'll have a link to my review where I put a little bit more into that. The Wills were actually from the original concept of Star Wars by George Lucas. The story was originally called Journal of the Wills, and it was kind of about these characters are kind of told from the point of view of kind of gods who were the Wills, and the idea of the Wills evolved into the general concept of the Force, but we're starting to see the Wills sort of brought back in. So we're starting to see the Wills here. There was actually a quote at the beginning of the Force Awakens novelization about the Wills. I can see it starting to get worked back into canon in a way, kind of like little tiny bits here and there. And I think we're going to see something, maybe not in episode 8. I think it's possible that we'll see something in episode 8 more about the Wills and kind of like the Force at large. But definitely within this cycle. I just see something coming back around to that, and those two characters really made that interesting to me. As annoying as his chant kind of got, it was kind of cool just to see like somebody who isn't a Force wielder but still kicks ass and believes in the Force, and like the Force kind of moves through him and allows him to kick butt. But I kind of agree with you that those characters didn't lend much to the actual film.
Is Chirrut the blind man?
Yes.
Okay, I actually enjoyed his banter, and I liked his personality. Mm-hmm. As far as, he was way more sarcastic than I imagined he was going to be. I imagined him being like a mystic almost in based on like the martial arts he was doing in the trailers and kind of like just his presentation. But like I loved how sarcastic he was, like getting the bag put over his head. Like, are you serious? I'm blind. Like that was some good like Star Wars humor there. I thought,
yeah, but I also like, did they have to say I'm blind? Like, I feel like that, like just say, are you serious?
Yeah. From a writer's perspective, that would have let the audience do a little bit more work for themselves.
Yeah.
I think that would have been nice. Yeah, I agree with you there. But the line itself was good. I mean, I feel like
funny.
that's nitpicky to be kind of like, oh well, like the audience should be able to keep up with that, which they could have.
Yeah.
But if there's children, children may not know that he was blind.
Oh, they'll love that line. They'll love that line.
It was cool to listen to them banter, but again, didn't really lend themselves so much. Besides, like some cool stuff like shooting a lot of stormtroopers with a big gun, or his little like staff that turned into a crossbow blaster thing, and he shot down a TIE fighter with that. Like,
it's a force bow.
Is that what it's actually called?
I believe so.
Oh wow, a force bow. Huh. I mean, like, that's weird. It took down a TIE fighter in one shot, and they're not shielded.
It was pretty cool. I mean,
it was cool. No, I'm not arguing against there being cool things in this movie. There are definitely a lot of cool things in this movie, but there are a lot of things that just were not fun also.
Yeah, Bodhi Rook really wasn't an important character. He was just kind of
exactly. Riz Ahmed, right? The Imperial pilot.
Riz Ahmed, and he is an amazing actor. I don't know if you've seen The Night Of, which is
loved it.
Fantastic, amazing TV. He's also a ridiculously talented rapper. Like, very, very good. Yeah. He's very good. He has an entire like music career. He's had it for years. It's kind of neat. Look into the Sweatshop Boys. But yeah, like his character, it just felt like, okay, like his character meant nothing until the very end, and that's only because like they needed a pilot, an Imperial pilot to help them get to that rainy planet that they didn't need to get to anyway, and then eventually to land on Scarif. Like, his job was only to know a little bit about how Imperial things work when they got to Scarif, but otherwise it didn't matter. And they even tried to get you to kind of like care a little bit about this poor guy who's like trying to defect and trying to do the right thing for everybody by giving this information away to the rebellion, and like they torture him with that Boar gullet.
Oh my god, what was okay? Can we talk about
it? Was
that? For
it shouldn't have been
second?
there.
What happened?
Okay,
like. All right, so this creepy creature with lots of tentacles comes up to him, and like we're thinking it's gonna be cool, right? Like it's gonna like read his mind, it's gonna make him go insane. Mm-hmm. What happened?
The creature's name is Boar Gullet. It's a tentacled monster that can apparently read thoughts and leave those it touches like completely insane.
I gathered that,
but apparently after just a few hours, you're completely fine.
And anything, how does it communicate with Saw Gerrera what the truth was? Like, was there any?
Saw Gerrera is crazy, so I'm sure he can figure out whatever he's trying to say.
Like, eliminate that scene from the movie entirely.
And you're fine.
Yeah, like holy crap! Just like he's in a cell. Hey, are you the pilot? I'm the pilot. Like, that would have been totally acceptable for that to happen.
Yeah, like, I don't think you have to explain why he's like kind of like disoriented. Yeah, dazed. Like, okay,
he's
he was tortured.
In a jail cell for how long? Like, maybe he was tortured. Maybe he's been starved. Maybe he's dehydrated.
Yeah, make his lips look like he hasn't had water in days.
A giant electric boogaloo monster came out and just wrapped its tentacles around its brain and read his mind, and then just disregarded Saw Gerrera's request for information. Like, what was that scene about?
But wasn't it kind of fun to hear them say Boar Gullet like 1,000 times?
I thought they just kept saying boogaloo over.
Boar Gullet? Boar Gullet?
Boogaloo.
Definitely weird.
Very bad. That was so prequely to me.
If I were to recut the movie, I would have left that part out. And honestly, like, you could leave out Bodhi Rook throughout most of the movie. Like, and it all comes like when we're talking about all these characters, like we've talked a little about Cassian, Jin, the Guardians of the Wills, and now Bodhi Rook, and they are the main human cast of characters that are performing this operation. And really, you don't get any like sense of togetherness at all about them until they get to Scarif. Like, there is that moment where they're all on the ground in their wrecked rebel ship. Like when they're on the rainy planet, I can't remember the name of the rainy planet where
Urdu,
where Galen
like
is. Yeah, Edu. Good job, Mike. I'm proud of you.
There's an E and a D and a U. I knew that. I just
You're
added
good.
an extra.
That's good. I'm proud.
letter.
You're getting there. You're starting to care about all the nitpicky stuff. But even then, when they're like all there and they're actually having kind of like a group conversation, like it just feels strained. You don't feel like there's a sense of togetherness about this team at all. And there's like nothing even then that really ties them all together, because they're all split up when shit hits the fan. When the rebellion comes in and starts blowing stuff up, like they are all completely split up at this point. Like they're all doing their own thing. They're all like helping take down TIE fighters or whatever, but they're not together. They're not working as a team. The only time they start working as a team is after the rebel base, when they're like, you know what, let's all just do this thing because like we have to. We're in this movie. It just didn't feel like there was like a natural reason for these characters to come together or care about each other enough to do this as a team. Like they all like cared about one cause. But then on Scarif, when Baze calls Jin little sister, it's like, is this supposed to be kind of like a Native American thing? Like little sister kind of like is an endearing term for somebody that they, you know, like that is younger than them and has to like take on this great responsibility? Or is that because like he kind of cares about her? Because like, why on earth would he be calling her little sister when they haven't shared 2 words together this entire film?
Yeah, I mean, I get the coldness that goes on between those people when they're all just stuck on that ship after Jeddah. Like, I get that. Like, I think that's more realistic in the context of the film. And I agree, yeah. Like, at the end, it's weird, kind of like forced bonding, even between Cassian and Jen. Like they're at odds, you know, until her dad dies, which is, you know, you could argue that like that's her changing character and she realizes it's worth fighting for because like her dad died and he believed in it, so she should believe in it too. Mm-hmm. But it's like, you could argue that, but I don't believe it. And I don't believe that it would make Cassian think any like more of her, like, oh, she suddenly came around, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I believe that he believes in the rebellion, and that's why he jumped on Rogue One with them and decided to go out in this suicide mission. But I don't believe that like they'd be anything more than just strangers on a ship, kind of just doing their job and psyching themselves up. Like,
I just feel like with Saw Gerrera, with Bodhi Rook, with a bunch of the planets that they put title cards on, I just feel like a lot of them, as much as like I love new characters, I love adding characters to my headcanon. I love like knowing everything about everything, but I don't feel like, as far as this movie was concerned, those planets mattered that much, that even Saw Gerrera mattered that much to this movie. Like he was kind of interesting in a way. And I know what he kind of does for Jin because of the book, and it's kind of alluded to in the movie, but like, he was the only reference point we had for her entire life past the farm where she was, you know, where her family was essentially just taken from her. So
it's like when he says, are we not friends anymore to Jen? I'm like, I don't know. Are you?
Yeah.
Are you friends? Who knows? Like, yeah. I don't know. And then they start doing like prequely Anakin, Obi-Wan, kind of like, well, you left me for dead back on this place, blah, 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 and like just going on that way, like just giving us like backstory through dialogue, like, you know, telling, not showing, which, you know, obviously I don't expect a flashback, but, you know, there's so many better ways to establish a relationship between these characters and to make me care about Saw Gerrera and Jin's relationship. I mean, the guys in Red Letter Media, the YouTube channel, check them out. They thought of a really good device for Saw, like that would have been like, you know, instead of just embracing Jeddah exploding, you know, maybe make one of his legs give out as he's trying to escape, and he's like, just leave me. It's like, I'll just slow you down, you know, go. And like, that's just one of the, like, something they could have done instead of just him just like loving death or like ripping off his regulator and just kind
he's
of
supposed to be
embracing.
crazy. Like that's kind of what I got from him. Like he was just he's like a fanatic, paranoid schizophrenic in a way.
He can be that, but he can also have a will to live, you know, and like a will to see the next day to fight. I don't think they're mutually exclusive things.
Yeah.
I just like there's no way I could care about any of those characters, especially after the friggin' Boogaloo.
Well, I feel like I'm ragging on this movie a lot, and at the top of this thing I said I loved it, so I want to talk a little bit about why I love the movie.
Oh man, I want to rag on it some more though.
I know you do, and you'll have the opportunity. But as far as like the film and its characters, I feel like the first two acts definitely suffered from pacing. But overall, I really like what Edwards did with his casting team for the characters. You know, where I don't think maybe some of the characters really shone through in a great way. I think that the actors were pretty fantastic. Riz Ahmed, you know, he's English, but he comes from a Pakistani background. Donnie Yen and Zhang Wen, if that's how you say his first name, they were both born in China, and Diego Luna is of Mexican heritage. Like, there you go. Like, the entire cast of that ship, with the addition of a woman, Felicity Jones, like, that's every single person in that ship is of a minority. I love that. I think that's amazing. It's so cool that they were to pull that off. And I didn't even think about that until after the movie was over. And I was writing about all of these characters. I was thinking about these actors and the other things that they've been in. I'm just like, wow. You know, with the exception of the droid, who was voiced by a white dude, but, you know, still not like a white guy in the film, like the entire team is from a very diverse background. I love that. I think that's amazing.
Well, they're all from outer space, Jacob. They're not.
I know, Mike, but I'm talking about casting, not characters. I'm talking
Right.
about the people themselves. I think that's really important. And you know, this is the biggest franchise in the world right now.
I think they're all super talented actors, and you know the film was better for it. Everybody is fantastic in it. You know, with what they had to work with.
Yeah,
Things we liked.
things we liked. Speaking of that droid, just briefly, I love K2.
Oh my god, my girlfriend just got the die-cast figure.
Yeah.
Did you see that in her feed? Oh my god.
Yeah, I did. It's great. Is that the Disney one?
I think so. It's she said it's heavy as hell,
Yeah,
and
okay.
it's a die-cast figure. I don't know.
He
I
is
haven't
my
seen it in person yet.
favorite droid design ever to come out of Lucasfilm. He is great. The design of that droid is incredible. It's just so cool.
He seems like most of the droids in the movies. He's just like a bipedal humanoid kind of thing.
Yeah, but he's
know?
like matte black. I love matte black.
Oh my god, you're just like getting into finishes here. I guess, yeah, we haven't seen that finish on any other droid. It's all been polished chrome or metal or
Matte
whatever.
black droids, Coke white Star Destroyers,
Oh god, you're back in your kicks again.
which also were beautiful in this film. Absolutely
yeah.
gorgeous.
Things I liked.
That
Things I
shot
liked.
where they go crashing down onto the shield gate. Oh my God, Mike, that was incredible.
Those Star Destroyers colliding. So fun to watch.
It was so cool. It looked amazing. I think
Just a good
this was
tactic.
probably one of the best space battles I've seen.
Everyone's saying that. I like the Return of the Jedi fights better.
Yeah, Jedi was fun. And, you know, even to a certain degree, I like the ones in, I think it was episode 3. Like, when they had all those, like, bug droids on them. I thought that was kind of, like, fun.
In the opening scene.
Yeah. I thought that was fun. And, like, you know, he's, like, shaving him off with the wing. And I'm like, you know, they're kind of, like, showing how great Anakin is as a pilot. And, like, it's also fun. I just love that. I love the space stuff. I know you do, too. I just thought this one was particularly great because it wasn't, like, overdone. Like, they're not doing anything, like, ridiculously tricky. They're just, you know, they had a clever idea.
Yeah, I mean, I'll always want more.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was well done. I feel like there's something I wanted to say. Oh my gosh. Okay, so speaking of the Star Destroyers, when Vader's destroyer comes out of hyperspace and that cruiser just bounces off of it.
Yes.
I shot up in my chair when that happened and like gripped the sides of my seat. I was like, oh my god, 'cause that's something you never see. Like ships dropping out of hyperspace is one of my favorite things to see in Star Wars.
It just
You know,
appears.
Yeah, it just and it stops so quickly. You're like, inertia and movement, like how does it all work? And obviously we can't get caught up in the science fiction aspect because it's science fantasy.
Yeah.
But it just watching it visually, it's so fun. And seeing, because not only was Vader coming out of hyperspace, those ships were entering hyperspace and just bouncing off of that. And you see like 0G, just like the idea of that is something that's often ignored in Star Wars. I mean, you never see people floating around in space in Star Wars, right? I mean,
right.
In the asteroid and Empire, they're grounded. The gravity seems, very earthly. And, every ship has gravity in it. Nobody's floating around like a space station. But like just seeing a ship bounce off, you're oh my gosh, there's no orientation in outer space. You get to see it finally.
Definitely cool. I loved every single bit of that. I think thinking back at like just what I've seen of Gareth Edwards' just filmography.
What did he do besides Godzilla?
He did Monsters.
Okay.
It was that Indian monster flick that was on Netflix and everybody loved. Yeah. Thinking back at the two of those movies, which are, I think, the only ones that I've seen. I'm not really sure what else he's done apart from those two. I think where this movie excelled was where those movies excelled. Down on the ground with gigantic things roaming around and just like chaos going on. Godzilla, you've got destruction by this gigantic monster. In Monsters, you've got these gigantic monsters that are looming around and you're like trying to stay out of their sight. And like that is where this movie's shown, where you've got these AT-ATs, which is cool to see again, but these are the AT-ACTs technically, but on a beach scene, you got kind of like a Pacific War thing going on. I think that's where this movie's shown. And I honestly, I feel like they could have done so much more if they would have just expanded that a little bit, got rid of that scene on Edu, and just gone straight to Scarif. Like, there's so much stuff in the trailers that is missing from that. And I'm not talking about the TIE fighter that comes up and meets Jyn at the very top of the tower. Like, I felt that was kind of corny, and I didn't like that was there anyway. But, like, those scenes where you just... Do you think it was just something that was created for the trailer to make people be like, ooh, TIE fighter, Well, no, I don't know. I feel like maybe there was, like, another shot where another universe where Chirrut uses his force bow and he takes it down, except they just moved that to Edu in the new version of the film. Who knows? I don't like that was there to begin with, but I love the stuff that's going on there. I love the Pacific War idea. I love that they have like these guys that are rolling out from underneath this stolen Imperial cruiser and rolling away in the smoke and then taking cover in the leaves and just like taking people out. There's a nice little joke there about the T-15 being obsolete. That was kind of funny. But just kind of like the Pacific War, Vietnam kind of ops that was going on in that scene. And they took so much out of it because if you look back at the trailer, there are those shots where you just see like tons of stormtroopers just like floating in the shallow water, and you see Krennic like striding across the water and looking at all the wreckage and his cape's flowing. That was such a cool shot, but it's not in the movie because he just goes straight to the tower, and he's calling for the garrisons.
I mean, you make a good point about Edward's previous filmography, but I think one thing he did, like you're right, he does direct great action, but I think in the midst of all that action, he does really. I mean, Monsters was just those two actors pretty much the whole film, right? And you get this really intense connection between. I think he babysitting that girl essentially, the male in that film.
Yeah, he had to go get her and bring her back. I think.
I mean, like I see that as like. No, I guess I can't say that's like a Cassian Jyn thing because obviously Jyn can take care of herself, as we can see. But like I could see like an interesting flip on that, where like he doesn't have to, like Cassian doesn't have to babysit Jyn. He realizes that, even though he's been kind of sent in to like kind of wrangle her as a rebel, because she rebels.
I rebel.
But yeah, like Gareth Edwards just does great human connection in the midst of crazy, massive destruction, and that's what I missed in this. Except for that last moment on the beach. That was something that like maybe he fought for that, but just like I felt that's where I saw the connection between Monsters and a little bit of Godzilla. There wasn't a whole lot. I mean, they really made you feel for the humans in that film.
Yeah,
and like how the main character felt about his dad. That's what I missed from Rogue One. Do you? I mean, you've seen Spaceballs, I assume.
Of course.
did you think of Mega Maid and the air shield on it?
I didn't, but I saw the images floating around Twitter after the movie, and I thought that was pretty funny. That's actually hilarious.
Like, that's such a, like, don't you think the writers and like kind of just like the designers of this film were just like, wait a second, this seems familiar. Like a shield covering an entire planet that's governed by a little hatch, pretty much, that the shield drops. It also, did that shield span across the entire planet?
I think that's generally assumed. I mean, they do that all the time. Like they did that on it was on Endor, and then obviously they had that on Hoth as well because they had to take down those gigantic shield generators, which say they covered the whole planet. So,
okay, yep, those are the shield things that the AT-ATs blew up. Okay, so I can kind of get behind the idea of a shield being across the whole planet. The hatch thing definitely space ballsy to me. Mm-hmm. But just discussing it with my roommate, we were just talking about how much more effective it would have been to have just like a huge Imperial fleet guarding the planet. I mean, it would have definitely left like a way to sneak in, like on the other side of the planet, like kind of going a different way, or like having to bypass the fleet, kind of like the Imperial shuttle in Jedi kind of uses the codes to get through the Imperial checkpoint.
Yeah.
But it seems like having a massive fleet to defend would have set up the last space battle a lot better. And I don't know, just the shield thing would just seem kind of like a not a plot hole, but just a thing, like just arbitrary like gate. They needed to have some way to interfere with the plans being delivered again, and they could have accomplished it just as easy with like a checkpoint.
That and it also kind of cut off our heroes from help. Essentially, because I mean, you've got like that gigantic battle that's going on in space, but you've got just a small team, and they just want to reinforce that on the ground we only have so many people here, and like we have to get this done. And it's like the situation is dire, and this is our last chance, and we only have this small team of people that came on this tiny ship, and one or two X-wings that are able to make it through before they close the gate. It's interesting to think about, but like those are the parts that I thought was really great about the last act. Like it definitely was tense, and the whole time I'm thinking, man, this is actually like really cool. There wasn't a whole lot that I had to complain about that last part at all.
Okay.
Well, there's a lot left that we have to talk about. So I want to talk a little bit about a few more like little things that I noticed that like I just want to put out there for other people who might be interested in this kind of thing. Before we move on to some of the technical aspects of this film that were interesting. First of all, in Saw Gerrera's complex, there is a Twi'lek named Beezer Fortuna. And
Bib Fortuna's
something.
Like grandpa?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. Like, they've got to be related. He definitely looks a lot older. He's, like, withered and, like, really weird-looking character design-wise. I'm like, wow, this guy is really cool. Like, this is a cool-looking Twi'lek. And what I found after doing a little bit of research was that Beezer Fortuna was actually designed after, like, early concept art for Bib Fortuna. So they're drawing back to the Quarry archives to find like cool things to add in the movie. At someday they're going to run out of stuff because McQuarrie only made so much art. There's a lot of it, but he only made so much.
It makes sense. I mean,
I love that kind of stuff. And that's not the only thing that they drew from the McQuarrie archives for this movie. And one of my favorite parts of Rogue One is the part that I feel like a lot of people are actually given a lot of grief, but it's Vader's castle. I was so stoked when I saw this on screen. I gasped. I looked at my friends who I went to the movie with, and I'm like, do you guys realize what this means? And none of them understood. Like, they're just like, shut up, we're watching a movie. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is actually in canon now. This is so cool. What did you think about Vader's castle, Mike?
Well, I'm not sure what you're so excited about. I mean, it was on Mustafar, no?
Yes.
Okay, so it's on Mustafar, the place where he was turned into, like, the mess that he is. Uh-huh. It reminded me of Lord of the Rings, I guess. Okay. It was a large tower with a waterfall that was just actually a lava fall. People are pointing. It's like a hell of a place to, like the place where your wife died to set up shop there, just...
Well, she didn't technically die there. I'd say that most importantly, he was born there. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But more importantly, he was born there. Vader was born there. I feel like this is kind of like his place to go meditate. It kind of had it was kind of a nice callback, or technically call forward, to when he's on The Executor and he's like kind of like he's in his meditation chamber and he has his helmet off. There was a scene kind of like that in this movie where he's in a bacta tank and like he's kind of healing physically and also kind of like mentally realigning himself with the dark side. Like this is the place where he took the final step to, become what he is, to be, pure evil. Like he burned away his old self here and also some limbs, and he was born again as Darth Vader. And I feel like it's kind of dark to put him back on that planet with his castle, but I think it's amazing that they actually did that, because they initially planned to do that for Empire. It never happened. They tossed around the idea later, and it still didn't happen in Jedi. I just think it's amazing that it actually made its way back into the canonized story, where Darth Vader actually has like his own like place to a fortress of solitude, just to meditate and like essentially be alone, except for that weird little servant of his.
Yeah, I do like that. I mean, this is probably a good point to talk about Vader, no?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I mean, Vader.
Yeah, so Vader's in this movie. The first time we really get a glimpse of him is when we go to his castle. So we kind of get like this cool shot of the castle and all the lava and stuff, and then it goes in. Krennic is landing there, and he wants to talk to Vader. So Vader is kind of taken out of his bath, which I'm sure kind of annoyed him. And Krennic is kind of basically just kind of tattling on Tarkin for taking his project.
Yeah, this is just another one of those scenes, like up there with the Boogaloo, that just really did nothing for me or the movie. I could have done without it. That's pun excluded. I don't care about the pun.
Yeah, the pun doesn't bother me too much.
No, I mean, like it's that's dumb to say that like a character would never say that, because whatever, who cares?
It's actually a very Anakin line if you think about it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Darth, the whole like apology accepted, that was Empire, I think, right?
Yeah,
it's right up his alley. Whatever. I don't even want to dwell on the pun, because it's just so not relevant to any critiquing of the film.
Move along.
It's like a campy movie in the first place. It's Star Wars, it's fine. Just everything in that scene, just like, I mean, there are ways I would have rewritten that scene. Obviously me, the great film writer that I am, having exactly 0 film credits under my belt and planning on never having any. I've been posing this question to a lot of people that anybody I've talked to about this movie, and I said, if you were given just the final Vader scene in this movie, just that dark hallway with the lightsaber igniting, how would you have felt?
I still would have thought that was like pretty badass, but I feel like they still had to bring him into the story a little bit, because otherwise, like you just can't bring out your trump card at the end of the movie like that.
Right.
I feel like you have to kind of introduce him to the story, and like he has to be aware of what's going on.
I agree with you. That he needs to be earlier on, but I don't think, because you're right, it would have been kind of cheap to bring out Vader at the end, and just like that would have been like R2D2, just, and C-3PO just kind of showing up to me. Obviously he needs to know what's going on, and it makes sense that he's dealing with this. He is chasing the rebels at the beginning of A New Hope, so it totally makes sense that he's there. So it's not cheap in that respect, but it is cheap to just be like wordless, no James Earl Jones, just like igniting the lightsaber and just tearing through rebels. But that being said, just that whole scene with Krennic was just not important. I didn't need to know any of that.
What does that scene show us at all? I think
it undermines Krennic. It undermines our big bad in this movie. Like which is done by Tarkin. Tarkin does that effectively, and I was okay with it then. But it furthermore just makes Krennic seem like a whiny, petulant old man.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's a different way of coming at exactly my same sentiment. I think this scene really shows us, again, like this is the one that really impresses upon you Krennic's ambition. And throughout the entire book of Catalyst, like you start to understand exactly like how important this is to him and just how far his ambition reaches. Like there are points in the book where he does things that are way outside his jurisdiction just so that he can progress his career. Like he wants to be top dog, and he's not even he's not really within the ranks of Imperial officers in the same way that like Tarkin is. Tarkin is a Moff, which is also interesting because it's like a weird pseudo military position. But with Krennic, like he's hardly military at all. Like he's part of the Corps of Engineers, and that's something
R&D.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, yeah, he comes from like the Corps of Engineers, so he's not like military. He comes from like the science of war, essentially, not even like strategy, but just engineering at its most root level. And that's why he knows Galen Erso. Like that's why he needs him. He understands exactly that Galen Erso is the only one that can do what he needs him to do. But going back to the scene with Vader, like it just kind of re-impresses upon us that this is his thing, and he is pissed that Tarkin is trying to take over because he knows that Tarkin is trying to undermine him because he has tried to undermine Tarkin in the past. Like they have this like weird little rivalry going on.
Great. Show me that then.
Exactly.
Show me Krennic being a smart, intelligent, conniving villain. Don't show me him complaining to Dad, that his sibling was treating him unfairly. Like that, I would have replaced that scene with the back to tank training, somebody coming up to Vader, and James Earl Jones obviously getting his credit there, just saying something like, why are you bothering me? Something to that extent. Mm-hmm. And something being like, there's been something happening on this planet, on Edu. Like there's something going on at the installation.
The Emperor requires your assistance or something, or like Tarkin needs
effectively, someone summoning you, you may want to deal with this, whatever. Just something that says like, okay, Vader is present, and then having the lightsaber ignite in that hallway would have felt less cheap. It would have felt a little more earned to me than having a scene of him just like scolding Krennic. I mean, it was cool. I like seeing him choke people out. I like, that's a great scene in A New Hope, where he chokes out that Imperial officer, for being a jerk, about the Force. Mm-hmm. But it's just, it goes up there with, things I like. I need to see Darth Vader, just choking somebody, when I could have done without it.
Yeah. I'm with you there. I definitely agree that like they did not show the best of Krennic, because I think Krennic is actually a really, really good character, but you don't get that from this movie. I feel like Ben Mendelsohn crushed it as portraying this person. I think like the personality of Krennic comes through, and like you get the ambition, but you don't get the intelligence and the cunning of the character from this movie at all.
No, definitely not. He doesn't, nothing is earned with this character. It seemed like you see him in charge and you see him kind of losing power, and he just looks like nothing for a second. And he doesn't seem to have a good grasp on everything. Is like his lead intelligence officer undermined the Death Star,
Yeah. I mean, like this is the point of Krennic's tale where he is losing control, and that greatly differs from what you read about him in Catalyst, where he was very much in control of every single aspect of everything. And I feel like I wouldn't enjoy so much about a lot of his character in this movie if I hadn't read that book. So again, we circle back to that idea where like it is kind of silly that we need to read a book to understand a standalone movie, because that kind of like defeats the purpose of the standalone. But if anybody likes Rogue One and they want to enjoy this movie even more, I would highly suggest, if you don't read any other Star Wars book in the new canon, read Catalyst. It's a good book, and it gives you a lot of information on the Ursos and on Krennic in a way that's entertaining, and like you actually kind of understand more about the character. And I feel that for Krennic, that made his downfall even more amazing to watch on screen, because that final moment where he kind of wakes up in time to see his accomplishment destroying him, not even just kind of like being on the planet that's being destroyed, but directly getting hit in the face with the laser, is awesome.
I like imagining the laser was so fine that it just blasted him right in the face. Not even the whole tower.
That like Tarkin is like looking on the screen and he just like gives a little Tarkin grin.
Oh man. Okay, that is a good seg. We can't not seg into Tarkin, in this one.
Tarkin.
So I guess like to avoid the stereotypical like CG conversation, who gets the royalties for that? Who gets paid in that situation?
His estate.
His estate gets the for the likeness.
Yes.
Okay. Obviously the voice actor gets paid too, and the visual designers, the effects artists get paid. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh man. What a slippery slope, I think, the producers, they're like the people, the creatives that are in charge of this movie. They're like, well, it's kind of like we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. If we don't put Tarkin in, people are going to be asking why Tarkin isn't in the movie. So we went with the best solution for us. And then people make the argument, oh, he could have been in a hologram, which I don't disagree with. He could have done a hologram. And then they're like, we did it tastefully. We did it, and people are like, oh, what about like Alec Guinness? So you're going to bring Alec Guinness back, for like this kind of thing. They're like, no, definitely.
Well, his
not,
estate would
not.
be like, no.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, like with that, it's they said, well, we did it. No, only because the plot demanded it. The plot totally demanded that this happens, that we bring this character back. And we would never do that for any other character in this movie, or in this series, but I mean, with the passing of Carrie Fisher, which happened in our break, just this slippery slope. What if we need some visual effects to get, I mean, I know she finished episode 8, but like maybe,
which is amazing.
Right. I mean, do they kill her off, in episode 9? Do they not? I mean, this is hypothesizing way beyond a film, which is weird. But is the plot going to demand that Princess Leia is in episode 9? Because obviously she finished episode 8.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Overall, like the effect came across to me as well done. Like it was super ambitious for them to do as much as they did. Because the first that we see, like we kind of see the back of his head, and then as it kind of looms in on the reflection on the screen, you see Tarkin's face, and you're like, oh wow, that's actually kind of cool. Like that's actually well done. Good job. And then he turns around, and at that point, I'm like, I'm blown away. And that's another one of those moments where I grab my buddy Brandon. I'm like, dude, like holy crap, because the uncanny valley is like, it's this weird thing, and you can very easily slip into the uncanny valley. But this effect, this use of computer technology to recreate somebody's likeness, more than anything I've ever seen, crosses the uncanny valley and almost gets to a place where it's almost completely believable. Like if I didn't know that Peter Cushing died in 1994, I would have been convinced. And I know that because leaving the theater for the first time, there were a lot of people that were, I heard people explaining to other people that happened. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like a lot of people didn't realize that was actually a CGI character. And then when I saw it for a second time with my girlfriend, she had no idea. She had no clue.
This is the most, like out of everything I've talked about with people from this movie, this is the most like ping ponged back and forth notion that I've been playing with here about like, is it good or is it bad? Is it well done or is it not well done? And where I've come to rest is that it's utterly subjective.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no right answer, because my situation, I know Peter Cushing's dead. I know that I've played a PlayStation game before, and I know how real and how well they can animate characters. I know that they've done Tarkin before for episode 3. So, I mean, from my subjective point of view, there's no way I'm believing this is real in front of me. I'm looking at his eyes, the way his body's swaying back and forth, or like just kind of these weird movements. I'm critiquing it. My best friend's fiance is sitting next to me, and she's like, she has no idea that it's happening. But most of us who know what's going on are just like, we can pick it out. There's something weird about the eyes. There's something weird about the eyes there. Like, it's not natural. But like anybody who I've talked to who hasn't seen the film knows someone who was totally fooled by it. And I don't know if that's because knowledge of Peter Cushing and him being dead. I don't know if it's just people who have an eye for visual effects, people who know film that's another piece of it.
Or it could just be, people like sensing that something's not quite right.
Well, that's what I mean. But there's so many people that don't sense that there's something wrong. There's plenty of people that are being fooled by this. And obviously I have not conducted any experiments or formal research on this, but it seems to me that people who are fooled by it are people who aren't into Star Wars that much, or people that just like aren't like cinebuffs, or like that don't see a lot of special effects movies, or just don't care about that kind of thing. It's just not something they think about. They're more entrenched in trying to understand the plot and what's going on, rather than just like fanboying out over the fact that Grand Moff Tarkin is in this. It's just something that I've been really struggling with in my processing of this film. It's just like, is it good, is it bad? And I think where I landed is same as I land with anything we've ever discussed. It's just fine. Like it is what it is, and it's fine, and it didn't hurt me. Like it didn't hurt the viewing of this movie. Yeah. I would have been fine with a hologram, but I can also see that as being a cop out, to some people. So good on them. They did a great job, and they fooled a lot of people. But they didn't fool me.
I think so too. I agree with every bit of that. I like that they were able to do that. I think it was ambitious. I'm glad that they went there, and that they made the call, because like there had to have been a point in the making of the film where like they're like, okay, like we have to decide, are we going to do this or are we not? Because if they don't do it, then I don't know if telling the story would have been as effective, because Tarkin is such a huge part of the Death Star. Like, he is the captain that went down with the ship. Like his ego is the reason that that it was destroyed, or that he was destroyed in the end because of his ego. And like that character arc needs to be set up if you're going to talk about the birth of the Death Star, because you need to. He just has to be there. It's just part of it. Their stories are intertwined.
Out of all the characters, I definitely was happy that they chose him to dive into in a big way. Or I mean, in a medium way. I guess it's not a big way, but in a supporting actor kind of way.
It was an interesting thing, and I'm glad that they actually did it.
And the other CG character, Princess Leia, she was also in this
That was
movie.
more of a surprise. That was more of a surprise to me.
I didn't see that coming at all. I had a hard time kind of predicting where this movie ended, and I guess we'll get into that next probably. But as far as Princess Leia goes, it was fine. I was happy. I think this is another thing I bounce back and forth with some people is just, what would they have preferred? Would they have preferred not seeing her face at all? Just, cloaked.
Which would have been weird.
In white. I thought that would have been a cop-out if they just done like cloaked in white, being handed it, and like an off-screen line, kind of like I don't know, what's it, like a Charlie Brown kind of thing, like a wah, 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 like unseen adult just getting something and saying like hope. I don't know. Yeah. But I also feel like it would have been like the ending just happened so fast for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, after the Vader thing, you're just like stunned at that point. I was barely registering anything after the awesomeness of that scene. Yeah.
It's just that I guess it's fine. I don't think there's a lot to say about Princess Leia, besides the fact that she was in it, and it was definitely a roller coaster, because she had just had the heart attack recently, and I was under the impression that she was not doing well, and then I saw the movie and I voiced that thought afterwards. I'm like, oh, it was really sad seeing her because she's she's not doing so hot, and they were like, oh no, she's in stable condition. Yeah, and so like I was brought back up again. I was like, oh my God, that's great. I was super happy and like, oh, well, she's fantastic. I don't feel as sad anymore knowing that this likeness is still alive or is going to be fine. And then the next day she died. And that like totally, it just dragged it down again. It was kind of a bummer. I mean, it was not kind of, it was absolute bummer. But I don't want to dwell too much on that. But going to the end, just the action of that Vader fight happening so close to the credits rolling was odd to me. It just felt really abrupt,
Well, I mean, like at that point, like, of course it's abrupt. It has to end. It literally has to end.
But it doesn't have to end. That's the thing. Is like
it does.
You're right that sequence wise, the next thing that happens is a Star Destroyer is chasing Princess Leia's Corvette. That totally, you're right. that is the next thing that happens timeline wise. But this is a movie, and we don't need to have everything in sequence. I mean, it may be in sequence, but we don't need to have everything in perpetual continuity. Like, we don't need that.
Okay, well, where else are you going to go with it? Are you going to follow up on Bail Organa or Mon Mothma? Like,
actually,
just like,
yes.
Why? They're just going to look bummed out.
What about Mon Mothma giving a speech about hope? You know, like that, I would have been totally able to digest a voiceless Carrie Fisher, with no, like a faceless, voiceless Carrie Fisher, if, you know, like shots of that had been like, if we had a montage shot of the Vader fight escaping, over a voiceover from Mon Mothma talking about, you know, rebellion and hope and whatever, pretty much everything that Jyn Erso said, but earned at this point because we saw people die for the rebellion, you know, like, it was just the rate of there's a speed of the ending. Just like, I get it seemed like an episode of the Clone Wars to me. Just because that show ends really abruptly because they can do that. They have an episode coming up next that's going to continue this like 3-episode arc.
Well, I think that's the idea.
It
like
is,
the next episode is episode 4.
But it's not a standalone movie. And that's another thing I don't think I should be dwelling on this either, but you know, it's not a standalone movie. And maybe they kind of dropped that. Maybe they sneakily just kind of like shirked that cloak of this, the idea of this being like a Star Wars breakaway film, you know, like it's in the universe of Star Wars, because that makes it dependent on A New Hope, which in itself is not bad, but to rely on the end of a movie feeling good, like, and I mean like the literal last few seconds, feeling good, you know, and rewarding, and you know, like being able to connect with everything that's happened and digest the deaths of every main character in this film. I think it requires something else.
I think it could have ended on a more unsettling note. Like if they would have left the hope line out of there, which I feel like they just felt like they had to do. Like they're just like, we have to put Princess Leia in here somehow. And like, what else is she going to say other than, you know, something hopeful?
Yeah, I would be so scared. I mean,
that's the
she's
thing.
Obviously, she's courageous, you know, and everything. That's Princess Leia. But just like, what a crazy predicament the rebellion is in. This super weapon that they've just witnessed the destruction of, you know, so many people died in this and so many resources lost. You know, like, sure, they have hope, but like, holy crap, like I would be so frightened.
Also, Darth Vader was just like literally standing on the edge of space watching you fly away.
Oh yeah, it's a diplomatic vessel though. Don't worry, it's fine.
I don't know. I liked it, like being able to kind of like watch them back to back now. Being able to watch Rogue One and then go home, put on A New Hope, and it literally just it's completely seamless. And at first, when I saw the movie, I'm like, I'm not sure this feels like it's seamless. And then I watched it, I'm like, oh my god, it is. Like,
no, it is seamless, but I don't think that's a good thing. And or maybe it will be. You know, maybe after episode 8 picks up right where episode 7 left off, maybe I'll care less about this this whole seamlessness thing. But I didn't need a seamless transition. I just wanted, you know, like a falling action.
If Rogue One is the story of the Death Star plans being delivered to the Alliance, like they have to get it to Leia. They have to get it onto that ship. They have to.
But just give me like a moment of repose, you know? I just saw my heroes, who I haven't connected with very well, incinerated on a beach holding hands. And, you know, I just saw like 10 rebels just get sliced in half by Darth Vader. And I just saw, you know, a character in CG. Give me like a second before you hit those credits, please. Just 1 second. I don't even think there's 1 second. Hyperspace credits.
Yeah.
Just like hang on it, have the Star Destroyer follow, and like then have the credits come in afterwards. It's just like it's all moot because, you know, like it's not going to change. This is a movie, but it's just like it's just how I felt. You know,
I mean, Mike, if you want to recut and put an extra second in there, I'm sure you could do that.
Yeah, let me get my visual effects team.
You could put like 4 seconds of Jar Jar in there if that would make you feel better.
That's the thing. If like Infinity monkeys are put in a room with Infinity typewriters, they'll produce a work of art. And if you put Infinity if you duplicate me 1,000,000 times, you might get one passable visual effect over forever.
There's the title, One Infinity Mics in a Room.
Infinity mics in a room. Oh boy. Let's talk about that, the flaw that Galen put into the Death Star.
Yeah.
Does that diminish the flaws that come later on in in Star Wars? You know, like the ones we see at Starkiller Base and the ones we see at Death Star 2?
Not necessarily.
Those are always exploited. You know, they're exploited like faults in the design of that. So you'd think
Well,
after
not
like
necessarily. I mean, nothing is impenetrable. The reason that Death Star 2 is so easily destroyed, like
is
apart
half
from-
built.
It's half built, and the only thing that was stopping them was, you know, essentially the shields that they had to take down on Endor Moon. Like,
Right.
otherwise, you know, there was nothing standing in the way of getting to the core of that thing, and like you can overload the core without too much difficulty. Like, I feel like you got to remember, Galen Erso is dead at the point when they're making Death Star 2. So they don't have the top people working on this anymore, because the genius behind harnessing the power of kyber crystals, which is what Catalyst is all about, and is also a really interesting thing to read about. Like, without Galen, like, I'm not sure they could recreate the same results of energy storage that they were able to do with Death Star 1. And
I definitely,
Yeah.
I don't think it diminishes the flaw in Death Star 2, because I don't think it was much of a flaw. I think mostly the Imperials just underestimated the Rebellion flying, you know, fighters into the Death Star. You know, obviously some ships could fit in there to like probably to move supplies around, but I don't think of that as much as a flaw. Like you said, I think it's just, you know, half built, and probably half fortified, but also just like the gall of the Rebellion to just fly, you know, snub fighters into a ship, into those close quarters. You know, it's just insane. So I don't think that gets diminished. And also I don't think it gets diminished because we don't know. I mean, maybe there was like a damage report after the fact, or like an investigative report that happened post Death Star, but like we don't know that the flaw that Galen placed in there kind of died with Galen and Krennic and Jyn Erso and Cassian, right? You know, like, does anybody aware that like there was like this flaw was placed there? I think you know, like, because I mean, up until this movie, this has just been a shaft that leads down to the reactor, and like a proton torpedo will go down there and take out the whole thing.
yeah, we all thought that before this, the flaw was the shaft, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I think it was kind of understood that like there's this hole,
and you gotta put a torpedo in it,
and that'll do it. But really, like, truly, the flaw was this, you know, this basically this chink in the reactor itself that, if overloaded, would blow the whole thing.
Which I think, you know, nobody would have. I mean, Krennic was the only Imperial that heard about this. All they knew is they were getting the Death Star plans, you know, like, which told them where the flaw, like how to utilize the flaw to their advantage, like where the flaw was placed, I guess, and how to access it.
Because the Empire didn't find out about it until the very end, when they're making like the second trench run, or the second of three trench runs in A New Hope, and the one officer comes up and tells Tarkin that, you know, they've analyzed the data and that there is a danger, and Tarkin's like, what? Now, in my moment of triumph? No way.
But did they find the flaw, or did they find that there's a hole? Like, I mean,
well, it was implied that it was the hole, but like it still fits. Like, I still feel like it, you know, that still fits.
We've analyzed their attack, sir, and there is a danger. Should I have your ship standing by?
Evacuate? In our moment of triumph? I think you overestimate their chances.
it still fits. Interesting. Okay, I totally forgot that. I thought they were analyzing like the probability of the rebels. Like, oh, they're getting close. You know, like they could hit this thing that we're totally aware leads down to the reactor. I mean, that's how we've always interpreted. I guess it's kind of a retcon in that sense. Mm-hmm. But yeah, but I mean, again, jump to Starkiller. Do you think they would have learned to like fortify their course? Maybe who would have the guts to like attack, a planet that is a Death Star at this point?
Right. Well, the construction of the Starkiller base was a lot different, and there's a lot of fake science behind that whole thing. But it was different than the Death Star itself. Like just from at a core level, the way it was constructed was different. It was built into a planet, and the way that it was powered was much different. I'm not sure if
solar charge, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a solar charge, so it's not. Has nothing to do with the Kybers.
Right, but I'm just talking about like the way that they were able to, destroy it, with the X-Wings swooping in, shooting.
Well,
they shooting just
the reason, the reactors, but the reactors are powered by Kyber crystals. Like the Kyber crystals are essentially being shot with lasers, like small lasers, and like No, in the Death Stars, and that's
No, I'm talking about Starkiller.
well, right. But I'm saying that the way that the Death Stars were so easily taken down, quote easily. The way that they were able to overload so easily is because the Kybers are like ridiculously temperamental, and like you have to have like very precise angles, and like everything with the Kybers has to be exactly precise in a way that only Galen Erso was ever able to figure it out, in a way that the Separatists couldn't even figure out when they were originally trying to build the thing. Galen Erso knew how it worked, and he was the only one that knew how it worked. So he knows exactly how to make it right so that the Death Star can function. And I'm sure somebody emulated that in a way that allowed Death Star 2 to be functional. It's operational, but still not safe. It's not able to contain the energy if it's overloaded from another source, from, say, another angle or another energy source like a TIE Fighter or Millennium Falcon or an X-Wing. You know what I mean? Like, if anything were to shoot at this thing and overload it from a different angle, like, that energy would burst out and it would blow the whole thing. And so with the Starkiller base, since it's solar energy, like, they may not be able to take it down the exact same way, but it's still like they still have energy sources, and if you blow an energy source, you start a chain reaction through every single thing that is getting energy from that, because this is not electricity. If you blow the power plant, it doesn't just shut down. Like, you don't just lose power. Like, stuff goes kablooey because of the way that they're powering these massive structures. And
That's what I'm saying, though. They got to figure out something else.
Well, yeah.
They've had 2 super weapons taken down already by the Rebels. But that's what I love about the Rebels. They never win with brute force. It's never brute force that gets them through. It's always turning the Imperial stuff against them, which is, like, symbolized by Krennic getting killed by his own, creation, really. But yeah, it's always, the Hammerhead Corvette slamming into the Star Destroyers. They use their own stuff to destroy the shield and to destroy the other Star Destroyer. They took out so much stuff with that one technique, but it was just from, like, great battle tactics and not brute force, not giant Star Destroyers, just like smart and like courageous, willing to die starfighter pilots, not legions of TIE fighters without shields, oh man. It just gets me going. Like this, the military stuff in that film.
Definitely. I'm excited for episode 8 because like I feel like this has to be the first one, apart from the prequels, obviously, that like features a plot without a gigantic Death Star sort of thing.
Maybe.
Empire was...
Yeah, you're right. If we're talking trilogies here, the middle one, it's where things get grim, and it's where characters become like just really great.
Yeah. So we'll see how this next episodic one turns out, as far as like what's most dire to the Rebels. I feel like it's probably going to zoom in a little bit more on the characters before it zooms out to the major threat. But we'll see. That's I'm glad you brought that up. The Death Star thing it's definitely interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. So we talked about overall thoughts at the beginning of this movie. Do you have any further overall thoughts about Rogue One now that we've talked about it for 2 hours?
I promise you I didn't hate it as much as it sounds like I hated it. I had a good time watching this movie. I will watch it again when it comes out on Blu-ray. And probably again maybe 10 years after that.
I might go see it again in theaters one more time. I really enjoy it. I want to reiterate what Mike said there. I feel like when we critique these things, I think when anybody critiques these things, we feel like we're being hard on the work. And in some cases, maybe we are. But I really did enjoy this movie a lot. I really liked what it did. I like where they went with it. I like some of the choices that they made. There were definitely some things that I would change. There were some things that I didn't feel necessarily needed to be in the movie, but overall, as a whole, I really enjoyed Rogue One, and it easily fits right into my watching schedule. So this is the kind of thing that I feel like I can watch time and time again, just like the original 3 movies. I feel like I can just put those right into the I guess the marathon. If that's what I'm going to do for the weekend. But I feel like it fits. I feel like it was produced well. I am still curious about what might have been.
I will never stop being curious about that. I would pray for a director's cut in this one, but I know Disney will keep that in a vault forever.
One of the most interesting things that came out of the director talking about this movie after it was out and after the critics had their way with it was talking about, what exactly they did to make some of the neat shots in this movie. Like, Tarkin, obviously they had some bits on the recreation of Tarkin and Leia. They also spoke a little bit about bringing back the Red Team leaders who, these are unused scenes from A New Hope, which there's not much of, unfortunately, as far as Gareth Edwards is concerned. He says there's not much for unused footage from A New Hope that we haven't seen. But what I found was most interesting was that he kind of revealed that there is a 4K restoration of the movie out there somewhere, of the original movie. And I'm very eager not only to hear more about the making of Rogue One. I have the making of Rogue One, well, not the making of book, but kind of like the concept art book here. I'm kind of eager to look through, but also to find out more about that 4K restoration and just what's going to happen with that, and if they're going to release it on DVD and Blu-ray, or what their plans are for that. I am ridiculously eager to hear more about that because they've been talking about it for several years, the unedited original trilogy. So I'm eager to see what happens with that.
Yeah.
Is that something you would watch, Mike?
I mean, yeah, I saw my last viewing of A New Hope back in the summer, probably like July.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a year from now, from now, so a year and a half from my first viewing, a year and a half from my last viewing, I will watch the original trilogy.
Maybe by then we'll have some more information on it, but
hopefully. All right, last thing, quotables. Is there any line that's quotable in this movie besides any K2 lines? You can't use any K2 lines. What do you have anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, like Chirrut's line,
the "I'm blind" one.
Oh,
or whatever. Like,
yeah, there's that one, but no, there's his chant, like his mantra. That's endlessly
good.
quotable. Mm-hmm. I really like, and I used this in my review at the top of it. Hit one of his lines: "I fear nothing, all is as the Force wills it." I love that line. That was a really cool one. But yeah, as far as K2 had a lot of the big ones, that's for sure.
Yeah, I felt like there wasn't as much. You know how like you had like the 1 man feels like or 10 men feel like 100.
Mm-hmm.
That was good.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
That was good. But I just like there's so much like just comparing it to the original trilogy. Just like all the things like laugh it up, furball. Like just not as quotable. I don't think you obviously had the Force one, Chirrut's thing. But
yeah. I think The Force Awakens did much better as far as that goes. I mean, like, the stop taking my hand, and like, I think there's definitely a lot more quotable stuff. It's more light. It's more fun. I don't think this one was supposed to be quite like that. So I don't think it's.
I think it goes into characterization though. It goes into character development. Like with that, like they. I keep bringing this up, but I thought it was so great. Red Letter Media did a cut of so. The prison break scene in episode 4, when they're getting Leia out of her cell and they're shooting at the stormtroopers that are kind of funneling into that room. Red Letter Media recut that scene without any of the banter that's going on, and it was so boring. But it mirrored every like fight scene from Rogue One, like the scene where Jen Erso is beating the crap out of the stormtroopers and Cassian's just kind of watching her kick ass. It was just that. No banter, no characters. Just all we're seeing is Jyn Erso being tough.
Yeah.
And I kind of get that it's like kind of apples to oranges there. Like in Rogue One, we're watching Cassian be blown away by, how tough this chick is, But I mean, we kind of get the same thing in A New Hope. Like we're getting, Leia showing how tough she is by, getting people into that garbage chute. But there's also so much banter going on and character development, and they're developing these relationships. They just met and they're just like firing at each other. Leia is so skeptical of this rescue attempt. But just like kudos to Red Letter for just really just like kind of spelling out like that right there just shows me like what was wrong with Rogue One in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Or just chemistry and writing.
Definitely good observations. That's I need to watch that. I love the one edit. We might have talked about this on the show before. Do you remember that video where they take all of the audio out of the ceremony scene at the end of A New Hope?
Oh my god.
I die every time. I die. So funny. You just hear like the lip movements and
Chewie,
the guy
just screaming.
Yeah, the guy kind of like coughing in the audience. Everything's completely silent without the score.
Super echoey steps walking down the hallway. Dun, 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 dun. Oh god, this is a great note to end on. I feel like because that's our outro music is the throne room scene.
Link in the show notes.
Yeah, you can follow us at Bantha Fodder FM, individual at Mike Comite, at Jacob Tender. What's our website?
Banthafodder.fm for the notes. Just append a /episode /16.
Excellent. And that's where you can find us.
Check it out. If you haven't yet, check out our holiday special, The Night After Jeddah, which is somewhat topical on the note of Rogue One. It was written before I saw Rogue One, so I did add in the Jeddah thing later, but I just love how all of that fits.
You nerd. All right. That's it. We're out. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Can we start with style?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have thoughts?
I don't know. What was the question?
Do you have any comments on the style of the film?
No, I don't.